we've got a closing panel about entrepreneurship. We have some amazing guys with us here who have either been investors or entrepreneurs or both, mentors, and had successful exits. An illustrious panel. And I'm going to actually keep myself out of it as much as possible and let them debate it out. And then I'm going to turn it over to you for questions. To give you a sense of who they are, we've got Chris Schroeder, who's the former CEO of Health Central, just recently made an exit. It was sold to Remedy Health. But he's a serial entrepreneur, built and sold a travel business, and among other things. Hani Sombati, who is a managing partner at Sawari Ventures, and probably one of the oldest VCs in Egypt. He has been instrumental in practically every deal that took place and put together many of the deals that are now in Link Online, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yes. And of course, Marwan Jama, who has been in both public sector and private sector. Private sector now is the founder and CEO of .jo and Kins, but also was previously the Minister of ICT in Jordan, which is one of the strong tech and entrepreneurship hubs in the region.
The Jordanians.
So first, I'm going to open the floor for them to each give a couple of words. I asked them to talk either about their entrepreneurial story. I think that's a good place to start, their entrepreneurial story. Chris, you want to kick off with this?
Sure. I've been both an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur. I used to run all the online businesses for the Washington Post and Newsweek, and then I've actually started companies. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we got the mic. It just takes a few seconds for them to turn it up.
I've been both an intrapreneur and entrepreneur. I ran all the online businesses for the Washington Post and Newsweek, and so I know what it was like to try to build something within a large organization, but broke out with some investors to build what was the largest online social platform in health, where people who have been there can share their stories and experiences in very powerful and interesting ways. And it's really something that you just have in your teeth, as you guys all know, because you are entrepreneurs, and it's something that I've loved greatly. I also have loved spending particularly the last maybe 2 years in your region, coming over here to visit what's been going on, which is one of the most interesting things I think that very few people in my country are focused on, but it's extraordinary over here. And I'm pleased to serve on the board of Oasis 500 and on the American University of Cairo Business School. And so I'm just very excited to be a part of this.
All right. Hani?
Well, I'm not an entrepreneur per se. Those who can do. Those who can't, invest. So I back entrepreneurs, help them, give them the three things: money, mentorship, advice, and Rolodex and connections. It's been a wonderful journey. I mean, in fact, one of the best things about doing what I do is that you get to share experiences and connections with a wide and diverse group of people, and hopefully one day we can distill those stories into a book or a blog to share with the world.
Okay. Funny story. When I was in government a year and a half ago, and I'm a business graduate. I'm not an IT graduate. IT experience came out of my work experience the past 20 years. When I was in government and I would speak at any official event, people would say, Muhandis Marwan, engineer, the famous Eng Marwan. I'd say no. They go, Dr. Marwan? I'm like, no. And you get these blank stares. We have a minister of IT who's neither a doctor nor an engineer. What do we do with him? So basically, my experience, I'm a business graduate. I've ran companies. I've established companies. I've failed more than once. And as you all know, you learn more from your failures, more from your successes, especially when you're in government. When I was in government, I tried to be an entrepreneur as well, to do things faster, different, in a more aggressive manner as well. And a lot of my Jordanian colleagues here can remember those days. And actually, I was an entrepreneur in Jordan when we established the ICT industry back in the year 99, when we had nothing in Jordan. People said, you guys are crazy. How can you establish an IT industry when in Jordan, just give you some figures, back in 99, to get an average phone line, a fixed line, you had to wait 4 years. So imagine building an infrastructure on top of that. But we had people. We had the best resource you can have. We have no resource underground, but we have the best resource above ground, which is people. So being an entrepreneur and taking on a challenge, whether as a businessman or in government or working with His Majesty on establishing Georgia's IT industry, it's been a great ride so far the past 13 years.
Great. Awesome. So Initially, when I had conceived of this discussion, I was thinking what I always say about ArabNet, which is that entrepreneurship is really important in the Arab world. It's a great opportunity for young people to create jobs, to create companies, to create economic growth in the region. And I was wondering if you guys have a sense of, do you think that entrepreneurship can really be a stimulator for economic growth in our region?
Want me to start?
Hani.
It's your region.
It's the only thing that promotes growth anywhere in the world. Let's take it, I mean, we had this discussion offline. If you ask me what's the most important thing about entrepreneurship, it's about promoting discovery. It's about people promoting discovery about what resources there are in any given society. And without the concept of trial and error through entrepreneurship, we will not know what resources we have, whether material, whether human resources. And that is the key driver for growth anywhere in the world. I mean, it's not something new. It's something economists have always talked about. They've talked about the role of the entrepreneur in the concept of creative destruction, about moving society further, increasing productivity, discovering new resources, using existing resources better. So it really is the only thing that drives growth in the long term, entrepreneurship. There is no other way.
We haven't done enough. I'm going to differ a bit with Hani. How many jobs are there in the Arab world today? Total jobs. How many jobs are out there? Who can throw some numbers? Total in the Arab world. From
80 million, 90 million?
Not you. Okay, anyways. About 80 million. How many of those jobs are in the private sector?
Not many.
About 35 million jobs in the private sector.
Yes.
We have to create, over the coming 10 years, and I'm sure many of you heard that number, 100 million jobs over the coming 10 years just to maintain today's levels of unemployment. We created 35 million jobs in the private sector the past 50 or 60 years. You have to create 100 million over the coming 10 years. And look at the massive shift you have to create to get to that number in terms of governments, in terms of way of thinking, in terms of rule of law, in terms of ecosystem, but for me, most important in terms of education. Entrepreneurs just don't come out of nowhere unless we really change the way we educate. And you can't start at university level. That's way too late. If you don't start as early as possible, and that's where IT becomes a tool in education. Because once you involve people with IT as a tool in education, people start to think. So we create generations of challengers, of thinkers, of entrepreneurs. So unless we address these issues, creation of 100 million jobs will be a massive, massive undertaking. Especially in some countries where there isn't that sense of urgency. And as many of you know, myself, many of you, many of the entrepreneurs, you become entrepreneur because you are faced with challenges. Your back's against the wall. You don't have many options. In some other countries in the region, unfortunately, the curse of oil feel that level of comfort, that there is no need to move fast. Whereas look what you have to do in the coming 10 years. And unless we really change things dramatically, and it can't be an evolution, I mean, it has to happen at a much faster pace, change of mindsets at the very highest level. How will this happen? This is the biggest challenge for us. And I think a clear answer, though, is what's happening here. This, had it not been for what's happening with the internet revolution, with the IT sector opening up, and with us having opportunities where our businesses, our subscribers can be anywhere in the world, and how, at the end of the day, if the ecosystem and the support system is there, Arabs can compete with anyone in the world. But it's the number, the daunting figure. 3 times as many jobs in 10 years vis-a-vis 50 years in the Arab world, the past 50 years.
You know, it's interesting. 2 quick observations. One is just coming here. One of the things that I often find exciting when I've been here or other competitions of startups is the number of people who are just building wonderful ideas, very innovative ideas to solve some of the infrastructure problems. Because I think, obviously, there's a lot of infrastructure problem, and there are a lot of things that need to be done that will take time and all. But as opposed to just wringing one's hands about it, which is always the easy place to be, the fact is that half or more of the companies I've spent time with here are literally either just building really wonderful and interesting things despite of the infrastructure problems, or actually building things which are addressing different parts of them. Frankly, I just find incredibly inspirational, and I think is happening around the world generally. I mean, Lord knows in the United States we got tons of infrastructure problems, and a lot of great entrepreneurs are building really, really interesting and innovative, powerful ways to get at it. Secondly, this is a particular hot button right now in the United States from almost a political perspective, but it has almost a mythic quality to it overall by the version of how a lot of Americans think of themselves, and that is somehow or other tech entrepreneurship cannot create job creation. And I just think it's a palpably flawed argument because I think a lot of people are much too narrow in the way that they think about technology. So a lot of people think technology means efficiency and doing more with less. And obviously there are elements about that, but what they completely discount are two things. First is what you guys are building here are ecosystems of creations of other jobs around it. So I'm sure you saw the study that came out just a couple of months ago that Apple is responsible, pick your favorite number, between 500,000 and 750,000 jobs, not at Apple, but other companies and other jobs that were created sprung up to go into the ecosystem, which is a word I hate, forgive me, but at least it's descriptive that have done it. People say that Twitter and Facebook only hires a certain number of people. It's not really going to be something like the big automotive manufacturing companies, but at the end of the day, they've created hundreds of thousands and even millions of jobs because they've opened up opportunities that were never there before. In the States, the debate is often about things like manufacturing, the automotive industry, for example. But I could tell you that a lot of people forget that almost any company now is becoming a technology company. Almost any company is becoming a software company. And what I'm thrilled about is when I see not only I think manufacturing jobs are important, and I'm thrilled to see when manufacturing jobs are developed, but I'm also thrilled that there are a bunch of people now who are developing the software that's going into our cars. And so I tend to be quite bullish and positive about the ramifications of this and think we sometimes get caught in the wrong myth.
Great. I have a bunch of questions and ideas and thoughts about this. So I'll start with one. What about social enterprise, right? You've been talking about solving infrastructural problems. Us at ArabNet, I kind of consider us as a social enterprise. We are a for-profit company, but we believe that what we do has social impact. Do you believe that this is important? Why are we seeing, or are we seeing an increase in social enterprise? And how can we foster this thinking? Or maybe, Hani, you might think that this is not such a great idea. Maybe we should all be just making money.
If you don't mind if I...
Yeah, please. And is money the only incentive for entrepreneurs?
I don't think, I think, you know, how did you phrase the name of this panel? This is, how did you describe what we were supposed to be? High impact entrepreneurship.
Yes.
To me, the definition of high impact entrepreneurship is very much what my friends at Endeavor are thinking about, which is about the role in society broadly, whether it's job creation or mentorship or giving it back in various ways. And I think that we find some of the greatest startups out there around the world have a very keen sense that their mission is one of impact. But to me, what I find a mind blow are how technology is unleashing people's capabilities to have social impact in and of themselves, not necessarily motivated by money. So we all know about Kiva, we all know about Kickstarter and some things like this. I saw a young woman a couple of weeks ago who just blew me away. She's an Indian who came to the United States and built this little thing in Silicon Valley. And what she does is it's a platform where people can put in requests for very basic outsourcing computing work. Mm-hmm. And at the other end, she's built communities in the poorest parts of Mumbai and elsewhere where people go in and find women who really have never had exposure to computer technology before, and they actually have them come out to a local cyber cafe, they train them in the basic skills, and they outsource the skills to them. So now women are not only making money that they never would have made before, but in fact getting skills so they can upgrade their jobs. In the last year, they've paid over $1.5 million wages to over 10,000 women, which, you know, is obviously a start. But the whole idea that someone sat and thought that I could make effectively a kiva of work, not just about dollars, and have a multiplier impact, to me is the absolute definition of high-impact entrepreneurship, whether it's for profit or otherwise.
Okay. About the social enterprise, I think making money is a given. At the end of the day, you have to make money, but that cannot be the reason why you go to work. That cannot be the reason why you wake up every morning and go to your business. If that's the case, then something is awfully wrong. Something else must drive you. And that's almost always the case with any entrepreneur, any business. And this notion and this belief over the past maybe 100 or so years that the job of a CEO is strictly maximizing shareholder wealth. Look what happened in the world's economy over the past 2 or 3 years with the immense greed and at the end with the strict focus on creation of wealth and the strict focus on your bonus at the end of the year. At the end of the day, you have to manage expectations, you have to manage your shareholders, you have to take care of your customers, you have to take care of your employees, and you have to take care of the surrounding as well, of your community. Unless you address all four, you will fail as an enterprise. And if you think that it's strictly about money, and it's strictly about your money at the end of the day, look what has happened over the past few years. And if you don't learn from these failures, and again, the idea is you will learn from your failures. We need to learn from what happened over the past few years in the US and Europe and beyond, the recent economic debacle. If we learn from that and realize it cannot be only about shareholder wealth, that cannot be your driver to go to work, then we will move ahead. And I think we have an obligation to give back as well. I can tell you when I was in government, my concern was the divide not between the capital, Jordan and the rest of the world. My concern was the divide within the country. How do you ensure people in the least affluent areas, people who have little or no access to infrastructure or to technology or to proper education, how do you empower them? How do you give them an opportunity? How can IT really be an enabler and a silver bullet and not a divider? That has to be the concern of us people, whether in government or in the private sector. If we focus strictly on the cities and focus strictly on where it's easy to bring in business, we will create more divide. So I think this notion of a social enterprise is very important, and this notion of focusing strictly on shareholder value and shareholder wealth didn't hold and will not hold down the line, I think.
Hani, as an investor, how do you feel about this?
No, I mean, this is not about an investor. I mean, I think definitely, very few entrepreneurs I've met were only solely motivated by money.
Okay, but I understand.
That's a given, right?
Just a quick note, and I don't mean just by money, but you can be motivated by adding value, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about social impact per se.
But take it to its basics. If you're making money, then somebody's getting value because you're exchanging. No, there's an exchange there. There's a voluntary exchange, and whenever there's a voluntary exchange, both sides are getting value, and your job is to maximize that. Now, I think people are talking across purposes, and I think it's very dangerous when people start mixing communities and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, any sensible, I mean, when you talk about the corporate world, the problem isn't maximizing value. The problem is more of an agency problem. The fact that the people who own the business aren't necessarily the people who run it. So the people who run it for their short-term benefit. That's a different concept to the fact that if you are running your own business, it is imperative for you to look at the long-term growth of it if you own it. And I'm sure there are studies out there, the people who own their businesses and still run them, they look long-term value, they look at their customers more, they understand how they make money. So I do think making money is one of the best ways to actually gauge whether you're doing a good job or not. And I think it's, in this day and age, I think it's becoming a stigma, and I think it's unnecessarily true. I mean, I have people, entrepreneurs that come in and they think that I want to add more value, I want to do this, and I tell them, the day you start making money is the day that you're serving your customers, so let's focus on that and always focus on that. And if you think how to make money a year, 2, 5, 10 years from now, that's part of taking care of your community at large. So as somebody, I do think it's dangerous to mix those two things, personally. And I think a lot of damage has happened because people started mixing what they perceive to be their social aspect with what they should be really doing.
But I think you'll find that it's across the spectrum, both are true. There are people who pursue quarterly profit goals, and they've done a huge malfeasance and are in jail. There are people who may have gotten off their mission and get distracted by other things, and they go in Chapter 11 courts. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what you said is so important is whether it's a social entrepreneurship thing, which is maybe different, or a capital thing, is are you thinking about it in the long term? I'm an angel investor and a venture capitalist as well, and I love what someone said yesterday. Don't talk to me about your exit. Talk to me about what you're trying to create over time. And that can manifest itself, I think, in a lot of different ways.
And anything you take to an extreme is not good,
Right.
including capitalism. Be maybe a bit controversial. If you take the wealth of the richest 200 people in the world, their wealth is equivalent to the poorest 75% of the globe.
Yes.
If you think that's why you have unrest, why you have revolutions, why you have disobedience, it's not politics, it's economy at the end of the day. It's making ends meet. And when you have this kind of an extreme, that's why you have what you have today. So that's when you kept stressing over and over. That's about shareholder wealth. Granted, of course, at the end of the day, your business has to make financial sense. We all know that. But when that becomes your sole driver, when that becomes your only parameter that you're measured by at the end of the year, that's where the concern is, whether it's your own business or your CEO. And in my opinion, again, I respect Hani's opinion, but I differ with him.
You have to take the greater perspective in that there is a problem. There is a legal problem, a fiduciary problem, that as a board member, that you have to have. I mean, you are responsible to the shareholders. There is a legal problem there, and you cannot. Once people start having double and triple bottom lines that are not that exist in a legal vacuum, it opens up all sorts of abuse.
But again...
And I'd like to take one more thing, because this whole concept of income inequality is driving me crazy at this point of time. How did those 200 richest men create their wealth? They created their wealth by being entrepreneurs. we're celebrating this today. So why are we castigating them for actually being successful? This is a very, very important issue.
You sound like Mitt
Hold on,
Romney.
guys.
I mean,
I want to pull this back a minute.
it's not one
By
or
the way, I'm
other.
not castigating. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I'm no longer in government. I left government about a year and a half ago. So I'm back to my roots. I'm just saying, keeping that balance. I'm not saying, and you mentioned, is it strictly about making money? I'm saying it's way beyond that. It can't be only that. And the stability of your firm, the stability of the country you're in is as important as your firm. If the location you're in is not stable, that's going to impact your firm and its board.
Let's ask the audience. How many people think that entrepreneurs should think about their societies when starting their companies? Raise your hands high. Okay. So I want to move off to a different...
Can I ask a question?
The Jordanians
Sure,
raise their hand.
ask a question.
Right, and it's a very, very simple question, right? Probably the world was the largest two occupations in the turn of the 20th century were hand looms and carriages. Would you have the number of people who lost their jobs with the mechanization of the loom? Would you have supported that? I mean, if I came and said, I'm going to do a mechanical loom in a city and take all those jobs away?
But you suggest it's a zero-sum game. It's like what I said before about the automotive industry. I mean, to the point about society, and to the point that you made, I think, before, overall, any society that wishes to be a great entrepreneurial society will eventually be as good as its education. And if we as entrepreneurs are not thinking about what role we can also play about doing it, whether it's within our company, whether it's training of our company, allowing people to be trained or what have you, but if we can't have an interest in society, that it's some sort of binary thing, it's crazy.
I'll take it a step back. I never said anything's a zero-sum game. In fact, the people who say that's the dangerous thing for me, right? Is that people look at the immediate effect of something and they say that this is bad, and they consider it to be a zero-sum game without looking at the longer term. People are going to lose today, but overall they're going to win.
Just a quick point. When His Majesty back in '99, he challenged us to build an ICT sector in Jordan, basically. We all forgot our own personal benefits, and we looked at the good for the country. And the king made it clear, and he keeps repeating that. He says, don't think government gets it, because very often governments don't.
Absolutely.
So unless you get involved and stop being on the receiving end and stop complaining and think you are in a vacuum, unless you take ownership of your own processes, that's what's required. And what happened in Jordan as a story, the ICT sector, and the result of whom we see some of the best entrepreneurs in the region come from Jordan, the best stories come from Jordan.
Yes.
And almost 30% of the audience, if no more, come from Jordan, this event, is the fact that the private sector took ownership, and a lot of companies looked at the overall good, and not the only personal good, and basically worked hand in hand in government. Believe it or not, that's what happened. We worked very closely with government. And unless people start thinking beyond their own boundaries, beyond their own walls, beyond their own boardrooms, my concern, especially when you look at the numbers again, the 100 million jobs, where were those jobs? And they will not come from old businesses, they will not come from traditional businesses, and they will clearly not come from government. Those jobs must be created within the private sector.
Yes, and how would you
So
want to create
hold
them?
on a second. I'm going to interrupt you guys. I want to shift us a little bit because we're going to keep talking about this for a long time if I don't. So I want to introduce a couple more kind of questions for debate. One question is, sometimes I feel that entrepreneurs in the Arab world are not ballsy enough. They don't. Let me
apologize to the lady entrepreneurs.
Okay, right? Not gutsy enough. I don't see. I mean, today Mark of VIP got on this stage. He shared incredible growth numbers, and more importantly, he kind of opened up his books to everyone, right? And
Well, some of his books.
some of his books. Some of his
The
books.
top line books.
Some of his books. But what I'm saying is this guy is going out, he's spending a tremendous amount of money, raising a tremendous amount of money, scaling really quickly. It's kind of like the Silicon Valley model, right? I see a lot of companies here, they start, they get excited, and then they kind of don't move quickly. They don't grab things by the balls. I want to see, what's the problem? Is there a problem?
Confidence.
Why are we moving so slowly?
Confidence and management of growth.
I think a lot of it has to do also with education as well. Again, a lot of people I talk to in Jordan, I tell them, can your model become regional or global? What would it take to become so? And don't think strictly, and if you think in IT on a local scale or even regional scale, you shouldn't at all. Otherwise, you're in the wrong business. But I think a lot of it has to do also with investors. When they want to invest in a company, they look at the ecosystem, they look at the laws of the land. How easy can I establish a company? How easy can I exit from a company? Whether if I go into liquidation, insolvency laws are very, very important. Investors, VCs, they only look at how can I establish a business or can I grow a business if something goes bad and I need to exit, if the company is bankrupt. Insolvency laws are very, very important. This is the job of governments. This is what governments have to provide. But at the end of the day, I think education plays a big role. Because not only in our part of the world, in our part of the world, when you establish a business and you go to your parents, what's the first thing you hear when you come up with any idea?
Get a
The
job.
famous, no, that rejection always. So this is what has to change. But I'll tell you something which I've been involved in, and many of you are involved in yourselves or heard about, Oasis 500, being involved as a founder. The results have been beyond our wildest dreams.
Yes.
The results in terms of when we first established our first wave, and we thought we would get, with no advertising, maybe 100 applicants. We got 300 applicants, all Jordanians and some from the region. We thought we can have our boot camps with 30 entrepreneurs. We ended up with 60. We invested in 55 companies so far, 17 of whom got follow-on investments in less than 4 months. Creating values, examples here, Zaytoun and others, creating values 3 to 10 time multiples in a short period. You need to create more successes. We've only had in our region.
We need
over
to
the
create
past-
more companies to
Well,
create more
you
successes,
don't-
right? We
and
just need to see more companies.
And
How many?
you don't create jobs, you create companies that create jobs. You have to create
How many
ecosystem.
companies are being created in the Middle East every year? How many startups are we actually seeing launched every year?
Well, I can tell you just as one example, it's only one example out of many. Oasis 500 on its own, in the past little over a year and a half, 55 companies were created. And the target, Oasis 500, which was a very lofty goal, but we said, we always say, raise the bar, because if you set mediocrity as a target, you're not going to get anywhere. So we set a target of 500 companies in 6 years. That's a serious target. And
Is
how
it?
many yeah,
How many-
for a country like Jordan, strictly in IT and mobile computing and gaming, 500 companies. I mean, hopefully we can beat that number. But
I don't mean setting up 500 companies that last for a long time. I mean starting 500
Yes.
companies, right? If we're going to get really like 500 corporations, we need more than 500
No, I'm
startups.
saying this is
we
one
need
example.
50,000 startups, don't
No,
we?
yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
get, Hani, do you have any?
No, absolutely. I mean, we in our incubator or accelerator, Flat 6 Labs. I mean, when we conceptually did the model, we said we're going to do like 30 a year, and the first thing that when we have the first talk with the gentlemen or the ladies, and we tell them, we expect 80% of you to go bust within 12 months, and therefore you'll end up out of 30, you'll end up with 4 or 5 ones where you can back up, and then some of them are going to go bankrupt. And the beauty of this thing is that they're experimenting, they're learning how to do stuff, learning how to get responsibility. Opening up new markets, knowing what works and what doesn't work. And that's the whole point of entrepreneurship, encouraging people to try things, and if it doesn't work out, we move on.
and if
But
I
why
may
12? Why not 20, 50? Is it a,
We have a
happen.
capacity, we have a capacity, other people have a capacity. There's, it's not 12. I mean, we do 7 or 8 every quarter. That's around 30 a year, but that is the capacity we see. We'd like to expand it. Right, we're doing a model which is light in terms of administrative load, and on the end of that, we'd like to create an angel network that can absorb some of the output. We're trying to build that, and we're doing it one step at a time.
plus the change of culture in our part of the world, because the acceptance of, if you take like Silicon Valley, the two main basically pillars in Silicon Valley is acceptance of failure, even almost encouraging failure, and embracing entrepreneurship. If you fail there, and that means you're trying. That means eventually you'll succeed. When I joined government, and my first question, and there's an ex-government colleague here in the hall, and I asked him, where did we go wrong in our ministry? Just so I would learn. They were shocked by the question. Why is he asking us? Does he want to basically go after us? I'm like, no, I just want to know, because you would only learn from your failures. And I wanted to know where did we go wrong as a government so we can improve on processes and improve on things. And unless we accept failure in our part of the world, and unfortunately to this point, what we're doing in Jordan is changing that stigma, because when you fail, you tend to get mocked at. People make fun of you. Mm-hmm. So people are afraid to take risk. And you have to create that. So the culture is very important, the ecosystem is very important, and the laws are very important, because if you go bust, You don't get hounded by in the courts for years. If you go bust, protection from bankruptcy, and you move on, and you try the second and third
Okay.
and fourth time. That's what you need to create in our
Can
part of
I
the world.
ask Chris something?
Sure.
Yes.
You've been here like
Society matters.
a few times. What can we do better? What is it that you think that that
The
we
question
can,
that he didn't want to answer.
He's throwing a question at it, he's not going to answer. He's throwing a
if you don't
question.
want to answer it, that's
No,
fine.
it's not that I don't want to answer, but I think it sort of suggests that we do everything right. And the fact is we screw up thousands of different things. And I think Saad Khan the other day was right. What's going to happen here may happen in a different clip, in a different way, with different sensitivities, and it'll have a voice of its own. I will say three very, very quick things. One, I would unsolicitedly counsel you to take balls out of your discussion forever, because I
Yeah.
can tell you that the gutsiest entrepreneurs I've met, almost to a person, is a woman. So here and elsewhere. So I think that's one important thing to keep in mind. Secondly, it's just true.
I apologize for the word, but I mean guts,
Yeah,
really.
but it is about guts, which is
And certainly the winners, I mean, we in ArabNet Cairo, the top 3 startup demo winners were all women. So we definitely,
no, but it's important. But it's important because sometimes we all do that. I don't mean to single you out, but it is from my limited experience here that some of truly the gutsiest, outright courageous, frankly with the most to lose, and interesting innovations I've seen have come from women in this region. So I think that's very powerful, and it's certainly happening somewhat, I think, in the States as well. Secondly, yes, it is absolutely true that failure is part and parcel of its acceptance of moving on and everything else. But I will remind what we all know, since I've failed, that failure sucks, right? It's a terrible thing, and it's very, very hard to pick yourself up and go at it, and that's just as true in the United States as it is anywhere on earth. But in appreciation of that and looking at it, I remember when I first started up, my very first startup, I had a very famous Silicon Valley friend of mine say to me, "Welcome to the industry where there are two and only two emotions, and one is complete euphoria, and the second is abject terror." And every day I had those things. And so that is part and parcel of it, and it is something that I think all societies have to come comfort with it in some different way. Third, you know, I can tell you it's sort of interesting. My business school class in the United States was surveyed of what they wanted to do, and 95% of my class said they wanted to start their own companies, be entrepreneurs. 68% of my class went to investment banks or consulting. This is not easy stuff. And it will happen, because it has happened. And I think the next big exit or two, which will come here, I think you're going to start seeing a multiplier impact to the kinds of numbers that you're aspiring to.
Just back on the gutsy question. I think we have the gutsiest people here because the region is very difficult. Because,
Right.
first of all, the ecosystem itself, the infrastructure, payment gateways, issues to do with establishing your business and what have you, it's much more difficult than what it is in the States or in Europe. And that's why people here have to become much more creative with their solutions.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis places where you have everything is easy, everything is available, payment gateways are there, a credit card mechanism is there, payments is, online payments part of the culture. But here in our part of the world, you have so many obstacles. And that's why these people are very, very gutsy to establish that kind of business in our part of the world. And with all the impediments and all the infrastructure issues and the culture issues and the legal issues. If we talk about gutsy, you definitely have the gutsiest people here, I think, in our region doing this. And that's, for me, this is the Arab Spring. This is the real Arab Spring, what's happening. People here, people taking risks, people taking chances, people failing. And I'll tell you an example from Oasis. We've had people who come and fail the first time, don't make it to the first wave. They're coming back second and third time saying, we're ready, we're prepared, we've learned, and now we're going to take on the challenge. So you want this to become, the issue is scale. The issue is how do you take it across other sectors, how do you take it across other countries so you can create the millions of jobs which we need to create in our part of the world.
So how many entrepreneurs in the audience have tried a startup, failed, and now are doing something else? Oh, that's pretty good.
Look, I mean, the act that people are raising their hands tells you it's happening.
That's awesome.
It's
I mean, the
awesome.
fact that they were gutsy enough to raise their hands as well, not afraid.
That's true.
It's pretty good. Okay, well, I want to turn the questions to the audience. So I'm sure you guys have lots of interesting questions to ask. Question right here.
Guys, my name is Aboud. I'm from Souk.com. How many hours a week do you think an entrepreneur should work?
I give my case.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
The single, The only good advice I got in business school, that's the only thing I remember about business school, is relevant to your question. And a kid asked upperclassmen, how long should you prepare a case? And the answer was, if you have 10 hours to prepare a case, you should spend 10 hours. If you have 10 minutes to prepare a case, spend 10 minutes.
I don't think it's an issue of length of hours or how hard you work. It's how smart you work.
Yes.
That's what his
Sometimes
point, that's what his point was.
People who spend 10, 12, 14 hours a day in the office don't necessarily impress me. Because if you can get that work done in 6 hours, that means there's an efficiency issue,
Yes.
there's intelligence issue. So it's not only how hard you work, it's very important to work hard, but how smart you are in working. You work.
It,
Well, it's not like you're moving to another planet as an entrepreneur.
listen, right?
At the end of the day, an entrepreneur not going to move off to some
As
God
an-
knows where, but
It depends on your dedication. But
'Cause-
if you make a commitment to your company, or some sort of commitment to your company, employees, your shareholders, you have to do what it takes to make it successful. And then you have to balance that with your life at large. And every person makes his or her own decision. But you got to do what you got to do, and that's the single most important thing.
Because the most common story that I've read from all successful companies or startups, it's the hard work in the first couple of years, and some of them,
It's the smart
the
work.
hard work is like
It actually is the smart work
it's the hard work and the smart work.
and the prioritization of your.
Sorry,
you
Hannah.
sorry. You have
But if I just quickly, because the reality is, despite what I said, it is about smart, but the first couple of years, it's all in. But the question is, where do you set your priority? So I used to take red eyes back from the West Coast so I could see my children for breakfast. I would go to every single soccer game my kids have, but the BlackBerry was off for an hour. Then it went back on. You just have to be committed to what it is that you want to do, but it's going to be all-encompassing. There's no question about it.
Okay. So we got a question there.
Hello. So a lot of entrepreneurs in the region so far have technical background. They were engineers, and now this is their first time starting a company. And one of the things, they're really good at math, and as a result, they're very afraid always of taking investment money because they will lose equity. So this is a question to all of you, especially Chris. I wanted to ask, how many rounds of investment did you take before you sold your company? And what advice all of you give to these entrepreneurs?
I mean, this could be a whole panel discussion of the mistakes that are made on this one as well. I will tell you, just as a quick observation, one of the biggest surprises I've had, not just here, but in entrepreneurship and other emerging markets. Hani's, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I can't get over
He's right.
how angel investors take so much of your company. I mean, it's just outrageous to me, frankly. And it's actually not only outrageous as an entrepreneur. I actually think if I were putting on my venture capital hat,
It's okay.
I would actually say in my venture, no, but this, I know Hani agrees with me. If I put on my venture capital hat, it's actually dumb. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to do much, much better with you controlling your company if I believe in you and the thing becomes wonderful than I am by somehow or other squeezing everything out of you in the early stages of it. So that's just one quick observation. Second, I could tell you that one of the mistakes that I made in Health Central is I took too much money too early. And so I had some preference on top of me that was larger than I wanted, meaning that investors could get more money before my team could get money out of it a little bit. But another thing that was very interesting, when we took a good-sized round with lots of ambitions about what we're going to do to it, the culture of my company changed. It was absolutely in the most subtle little ways. It wasn't like we thought we were going to buy new stuff and I didn't change my life in any way. But all of a sudden, people who used to pay $50 for a hotel started staying at $100 hotels. It was just all these little incremental things. And so I think at the end of the day, you need to know why you're raising the money. And the biggest mistake a lot of entrepreneurs think is the act of having money is success in and of itself.
Yeah.
Or if I have a blue chip venture cap, look, I got Kleiner behind me. I'm a rock star. And that's very, very dangerous stuff. You really have to know why you need that money and you want to use it in the smartest ways.
One concern I was seeing lately, and I've told a lot of my friends in Jordan, is you shouldn't look at, your business shouldn't be based on how much money can I raise within the coming 3-4 months. Your business should be based on the fact, does my business make business sense? If your business makes business sense and you can monetize it, you will get investors. People will come in and invest. But if you're basing your model, again, on the old bubble where I'm going to create the company, and then 3-4 months I'm going to dump it and sell it, you're setting up yourself for failure. At the end of the day, your business, when you fall in love with IT, it shouldn't be about IT. At the end of the day, it's a business. And at the end of the day, numbers have to make sense, and numbers have to add up. If they do, and if there's growth, you will get funding, you will get a lot of support. As an entrepreneur as well, one of the things I've dealt with a lot, be ready to change your business model. You may think it's this way, but it could be 180 degrees different. So changing your business model, be willing to accept that your model necessarily is not working, and moving quickly. That's the thing, it's speed of light. Nowadays, unless you move really fast, and if you fall in love with your business model and think this is it, that's the only way you will get swept away. So you have to, if something is not working, move quickly. The ability to change your business model is very, very important. So at the end of the day, it has to make business sense, and eventually you will make money out of, whether as a business or out of a sale.
Let's take.
No, I'm not going to answer that. I mean, I can tell you, if you want a good deal, have as many options as you possibly can, right?
Yes.
Question.
My name is Meher. I'm a political economy blogger, and I'm an entrepreneur under 1 year of age. From DC, so my question's a public-private partnership theme. Maybe Chris, you would be able to respond to this more. As an entrepreneur, I had a lot of skepticism about government. I used to work for them. But the ironic thing is the person that mentors me is a former private sector woman who's part of a program at the Small Business Administration in the US. So it's a government agency that has reached out to the private sector community when they are retired and ready to give back, and they're thinking in a social entrepreneurial sense. And I've gotten the best advice because of a mentor. Now, there's two schools of thought. One is, why do you need a mentor in this country and culture? We have enough family support, etc. Nobody needs to be babysat. I respect that, but I respectfully disagree with that. The other one is, no, you need mentorship. I mean, look at universities, they have career counseling sessions, etc. And then when you're mid-career, you have something else. So how do we move forward in getting that public-private partnership culturally accepted if that's the issue?
From my own perspective, you're sort of asking two different things. I think mentorship is imperative. Every success I've had is on the shoulders of other people who have taught me to do things or gotten me out of the mistakes that I've made and everything else, and the mistakes I tend to make are my own. But I don't see that there needs to be connection between mentorship and public or private things. I think at the end of the day, if they're just wonderful women and men who have been there, who take an interest with you and help. So much in entrepreneurship is we get so much caught up in our head that we get caught in these like gremlins in our mind, and the ability to have people who have been there just help us pull stuff out of our mind to become more coherent and more action-oriented, to me is as profound as the money in many respects. So I couldn't agree more with you in mentorship, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be conducted to public. I have to tell you, I'm from Washington as well, and I actually many years ago served in government, and I've become very skeptical of government's ability to play a really powerful role in the entrepreneurial equivalent. People hate when I say this in my government friends, because I have individuals at SBA and others who are wonderful former entrepreneurs, and they really do as individuals amazing things. But the infrastructure is by its nature so in a mindset of 20 years ago that it's very hard for it to execute in a way that does anything other than, in my view, to stand away. I was asked by a government group what was my advice for them to help the entrepreneurial background, and I said, get out of the way and get out more H-1B visas, and everything else will take care of itself.
So, quick straw poll in the audience. How many people here have a mentor?
Wow.
How many do not have one and would like one?
Wow.
Okay. Sounds like actually not a bad job of having mentors.
Yeah, but a
It's
lot
a personal
don't.
thing.
Sorry?
It's a very personal relationship.
Yeah.
That's the best mentors are the ones that take a real interest in your well-being.
So before we take a question, I have a quick question I've been seeing on the Twitter feed, and this is something that frustrates me all the time. I see on the Twitter feed, I'm proud of being Jordanian. Actually, this is a reference to you, Marwan, that you're here on the panel.
I'm proud of being Jordanian.
I'm proud of being from Joe. Oh, Jordan is the tech hub. Oh, Lebanon is the tech hub.
That's great.
Should we stop thinking like this?
No,
I mean,
why?
isn't this the way that as a business I run my business? I could not run my business thinking about Jordan or Lebanon or any one country. I reach out to all these countries and say, come support your entrepreneurs to come attend this event and have this huge place where we can all build a regional industry.
Well, nothing wrong with being proud of being whatever, Jordanian or Lebanese, what happened. It's okay, that's wonderful. But it shouldn't be one hub, clearly. I mean, we're not saying Jordan is the only hub or Lebanon is the only hub. I think there's enough business to go around for all of us for many years to come. I mean, in terms of the IT requirements, the infrastructure requirements in this part of the world and the Gulf are huge. So, and at the end of the day, people are going to work in this region. That's why is it easy for a Jordanian or a Lebanese to work in the Gulf? Because the affinity, the culture, and what have you, that's very, very important. So this notion of being Jordan being the hub or the only hub. I mean, it shouldn't be.
But
Clearly, it shouldn't be.
I'll tell you one thing. I mean, obviously, you know,
Or Egypt,
I've
or-
been to Jordan. The first time I went to Jordan was '99, and for a reason to talk to Maktoub to invest in them. And I loved it. I've been going back ever since. It's wonderful. They seem to be one step ahead. I think, as an Egyptian, I think we're miles ahead in certain things. They're miles ahead in certain things. You know, the beauty of it, right? I mean, good competition is great. You know, makes everybody, you know, on their toes, makes everybody push that extra bit harder. And the whole point is, has to be within a certain cooperative, friendly spirit. And we are. I mean, right now, I've never seen, I mean, after we deregulated the telecoms industry, most of us in the Arab world in 10 years, we've achieved more integration within this industry, because it was completely deregulated across the board, than the Arab League has done for the last 40 or 50 years trying to push things together. So, I mean, you know, we're doing it one step by time. There's a gazillion Arab, we're in Lebanon, Beirut. You know, I actually feel like home in Beirut. I don't feel like I left Cairo. So this is, you know, this is
Beirut
where
loves
we're
you,
heading.
Hani. Okay.
you.
So we're going to take. Sorry, I just want to take one last question, and then I think we're going to have the
Awards.
the awards.
Awesome.
But I just want to ask, please check that we're all ready with the awards, and we'll just keep taking a little bit of questions until we're ready with the awards.
I have a question for the panel. I just came from Gaza like 2 weeks ago. Before, I used always to think if I want to invest in startups, usually you think in Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon maybe, and some of the startups here and there. I do believe that if you look at other areas, that the normal suspects that you have in the Arab world, like the Jordanian, I'm Jordanian, I'm very proud of what we are doing in the startup business over there. But I do believe that there is a lot of chances and there's a lot of ideas coming from areas that we don't look at. Yeah. And so this is one of the things, I've been in Gaza, I swear what I saw there, I wouldn't even see it in any of the really big projects that we see in other areas. The other thing is, which was the same what Omar was mentioning, it's very frustrating, I think, that when we look at startups and entrepreneurship in the Arab world, we look at it as what Jordanians are doing and what Egyptians. Till now, even from investment point of view, or even from the individuals, how much we look at how we can make that kind of working to exchange mentorship between countries, between investment between countries. It's not I would love to know how many you would know as one of the investors, how many investment you would see coming from Jordan to Egypt, how many is coming from Egypt to Gaza, how many from them going to Lebanon. There is of course certain many players. You tell me I used to be in Maktoub, so that Maktoub is one of a case that got that kind of attention. But if you tell me the normalist seed money, let's not talk about like real mature investment. Let's talk about seed money. How many seed money that you will put in Jordanians, Lebanese as an Egyptian, and how many in the others?
I'll tell you. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, for me to get the most value for what we do, we have to be close to them at the seed level. But then we have cooperations with people across seed levels. I attend a lot of the Oasis 500 stuff. We invited the Oasis 500 people to attend our stuff. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to cooperate. We're trying to build a network here. We're building it from scratch. But we have a vested interest to make it work. And it will work because we're committed to it. And you know why it will work as well? Because it makes sense for all of us. And that's the best position to be in. I mean, we're going to do it through private cooperation amongst the community. Things like ArabNet bring us together at a more regular basis. We're doing all sorts of things. It's not going to be built in a year or two. I mean, to reach this point, you have to understand it's taken a decade. Am I right? And then the next decade, I mean, we've built certain cornerstones that we can build on the next decade that, you know, it will be unrecognizable, right? And this is where we are. That's why I'm very bullish. We are at a certain point whereby a lot of hard work, nuts and bolts, public-private partnerships, private is coming together, and now we can begin to see genuine cross-border cooperation.
At the end of the day, competition is great, and so be it. I think it's fantastic, and we're seeing boundaries are coming down. You're seeing a lot of regional investors coming in, investing in Jordan, and vice versa. A lot of the Oasis companies. I'm talking about Oasis because I've been very involved with it. You're seeing local investors, but also regional investors. Yes. A lot of the players themselves they use Jordan as a production house, and they set shop in the Gulf, and it's all in terms of sales and marketing. That's where the exposure is. So it's natural. People are going beyond their boundaries, and this notion that I'm strictly a Jordanian firm or strictly a Lebanese firm doesn't work.
No,
at the end of the day, you're a regional player, and More and more of today's entrepreneurs don't even look at the region as their audience. And the issue is, especially with mobile computing and things opening up, why can't you become a global player? And that's the real question about being gutsy. Why is it that we can't compete with the best of the world? Why is it if we have the infrastructure, the support, the financial support, and the financial backing, and the human resources, why can't we develop apps? Why can't we have applications that serve a global audience and think beyond our boundaries for a change? And that's the beauty of IT, what's happening. What you as entrepreneurs, today's entrepreneurs, you're living a third inflection point. We've had two. You've had the PC in the 80s, you had the internet in 94, you're living a third inflection point. This is a serious shift in technology and in business. And the fact that your audience, you can reach your audience instantaneously at the click of a button nowadays was something that wasn't around 2-3 years ago. Nowadays, Google is looked at as an old company. Microsoft and Hosting, they look like they're dinosaurs. So you guys, the young entrepreneurs, you have something that wasn't available for anyone even 2-3 years ago. So I think it should be.
The future is bright.
It's definitely positive.
I think we all agree on that.
As long as governments, what they have to do in being government employee, government service, public servant, is create the ecosystem and get the hell out of the way.
I couldn't agree more.
Just create that ecosystem, create the laws, the environment, and step away and let people grow and prosper. That's what you need. And create companies that eventually create jobs. That's what you need.
Great. Are we ready, everything, for the closing ceremony? Guys? Yes? Do I see Ambar anywhere? Sorry. Okay, I'm going to take then one last question. No one has a question?
There.
Right there. Last question.
Okay, thanks guys for the nice discussion. My question is like for non-business people, like people who are coming from non-business background, like they are so technical. What's your advice for them, like if they want to start up like a venue in their own like field or technicality? So what stuff like they should address first? Do they have to have mentor, like someone mentioned there, or they can do it their own, like if they have time to devote to this job?
If you can find that support mechanism in your country, where are you from, sorry?
I'm originally Syrian, but I live in Saudi Arabia.
If there is that support system in terms of incubation, support, mentorship, it's very, very important because mentors are very, very important. And incubation is very, very important. The financial support is important. But as an IT person, as a technician, you sometimes neglect the non-technical aspects, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurs fail. Marketing, admin, human resources, financials, can numbers make sense? And that's where things like Oasis and you have others across the region support you there. On the non-technical aspect, can your idea make business sense? And that's where the entrepreneurs need support. And there's a lot of support. There's support in Jordan, there's support in the Gulf, there's support in Lebanon, there's support mechanisms coming up more and more. What happened over the past, I'll just briefly end. Over the past 10 years, we had in our country, in our region, a lot of VCs who came with their millions, but the requirements were not the millions. The requirements were 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and the support you're asking for, the mentorship. Can my idea make business sense? Who can help me there? We're seeing more of these setups coming up in our region. The more we have, the better that will support you, hopefully.
I wouldn't change anything. I think that's right.
Okay, do you have any closing thoughts? Maybe we say one thing that could really help us reach an inflection point for this industry. Like one thing that could really stimulate growth.
Keep trying.
Sorry?
An inflection point?
Yes, one thing that could really stimulate a boom in the digital industry in the region.
I mean, hopefully we can.
One thing, Marwan.
One thing.
If I can this year, if I can have 10 more maktoubs, that would be another inflection
But that's
point.
not one thing.
Because that would create more and more. That would create more and more belief in what's happening.
Exits. So that's one.
Exits, definitely. You need exits. You need exits. You need hard exits. You need more good stories. People can believe what's going on.
Okay. Hani?
I mean, if you're going to be that specific about one thing, I think some form of mobile payment infrastructure, I think will do the,
Insolvency laws. I think insolvency laws are very important. As an entrepreneur, if you
I
fail,
think it's very, very
can I get out?
important. True.
Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
Inflection points are known in hindsight. I don't think you predict them. Keep doing what's going on. It's going to happen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very
Omar,
much.
thank you.
Thank you for being with us.